Welcome to 10 Kids, 2 Docs, Parenting Insights from Pediatrician Moms. I'm Dr. Sylvia Bank.
And I'm Dr. Vivian Carlin. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Okay, so today this is part 2 of episodes that we are doing on drowning prevention and pool safety. And I said in the first episode, there are so many different topics within drowning that we should talk about at some point. But going into this summer season, we are really focused on pool safety. We know that drowning is the leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 4. Most of those drownings do occur in pools. Our first episode was on how to have safety at the pool when you are going to swim. This second episode is going to be devoted to pool safety when you are not swimming. Unfortunately, 70% of childhood drowning deaths occur during times that the child is not swimming.
Yeah, that's really important. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the 10 Kids, 2 Docs podcast. Seasoned pediatricians and longtime friends, Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin have counseled thousands of parents and are raising 4 and 6 kids, respectively. Join these doctor moms as they incorporate fun and their combined wisdom and experience to share parenting insights for anyone looking for practical and trustworthy guidance. Please note that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment from your doctor.
Please be advised that this episode contains discussions and depictions of drowning, which may be upsetting to some listeners. Okay, so Sylvia, as I said, we really need to draw awareness to how to keep children safe when there is a pool and people are not swimming. The child isn't swimming. They're in their clothes. They're not in a swimsuit. We want our listeners to be aware and informed that pools can be dangerous, especially when there is nobody in there swimming. And we really want to talk about how to keep children safe from the pool. So why don't you start us off?
Sure, this definitely comes up when people have at-home pools, and it also comes up when people are staying at a rental house or a property that has a private pool. So these are the types of settings where I think this is the most applicable. I know someone who had a pool in their home and they were hosting, an afternoon pool party. And unfortunately, in this event, they actually had a child at that party die from drowning in their pool.
Oh.
And that being said, as the pool owner, it was such a traumatic thought that this happened in their home, in their pool, that they wound up decommissioning the pool, like destroying the pool, like filling it in so it didn't exist anymore, and then went on to then eventually move to a different home, because it was just such a stain on their conscience and what had happened in that pool in their house. And this is not the norm of people that have at-home pools, but I do want to emphasize the importance and the responsibility that people can feel eventually for being that homeowner and having a pool. So this episode is kind of trying to illustrate how, when you're a pool owner, ways of kind of keeping that area safe and to make sure that everyone has fun and no adverse events happen.
Oh, I think that's a really good point.
Do you have any stories to share on this topic?
I have a story. Again, this is an example of, incidents that occur when there's non-swim times. And my children, as your children have lifeguarded. And one of my children in particular was at work one day and then was off the next day. And that next day, there was the standard safety break. Nobody is supposed to be in the pool, right? Lifeguards come down off the stands. Safety break is happening. And a parent comes looking for a security guard because they can't find their 6-year-old. And as the parent is finding the security guard, somebody goes to look at the pool and the child is in the pool, and there was a resuscitation that occurred. And I remember, my child telling me this story because these were her friends, these were her coworkers, about how incredibly shaken up they were. And I was thinking and explaining to her, when there is a child missing and there is a pool in the vicinity, somebody immediately goes to the pool. You don't go look out on the road. You don't go look,
in the locker room, right?
Security. You go to the pool. You immediately go to the pool. I tell that just as, that was even in a public setting. But again, it was a stated like no swim time. And this happened. So
no, I mean, parents don't really think about that. They often think about drowning in the context of while we're swimming or at a party or having fun at a pool. But it's those times when you're not thinking about it and the pool isn't first and foremost on your mind that I think this episode is really telling you it should always be on your mind if a pool is present, right?
And again, I'm going to point listeners back to the National Drowning Prevention Alliance website, where you can find a link to a campaign called, quote, "The Clothes They Wore," end quote. And it just highlights the heartbreaking reality of childhood drownings through powerful testimonials. So they actually have recorded brave parents telling the stories of their children drowning in this scenario during non-swim times when they were wearing regular clothes. And I think it's a great resource because it's, while exceptionally sad, it should be very eye-opening for all of us about how quickly and easily this can happen and how much we need to be on guard and provide layers of protection.
I'm not saying that people shouldn't have backyard pools, or, if you're staying at a vacation home or a rental for a week or something, and you want to enjoy a pool as well in your rental home, that's perfectly fun as well. But there are things that we want you to be aware of for the safety of your children, toddlers and children, when backyard pool is present where you're staying.
Yeah, I think there's been twice that we've stayed with other families at a Airbnb, VRBO that had a pool. And I remember looking through pictures, and I am literally, all I want to know about is the fence that's around that pool. Mm-hmm. So I need to see in the pictures that the fence is fenced on all sides, that the house is not one of the sides, right? That you don't have access directly from the house to the pool. I'm also like often zooming in to try to study the latching mechanism.
Yes. To say like, can my child figure out how to open this?
Yes, this is really like when my kids were younger. But, do I think that gate is self-closing? How hard is it going to be to get in that gate? Do I need to bring like cable ties so I can like cable tie the gate closed when we're sleeping at night? This is the extent of my paranoia when we are staying at a place with a pool to which I'm trying to investigate it.
And I think we've also experienced like sometimes there's like a bedroom or a basement set of bedrooms that leads directly to the pool, and who is sleeping down there? Like it seems appropriate, like the bedding and the arrangement seems appropriate for the younger kids to all be down there. But if there is a direct access to the pool at night when they're sleeping, then that's a no-go, right? Like children should not be sleeping where they open a door and can go directly to the pool.
Yes. Yeah. So let's transition in the second half to what the AAP recommends, what resources are out there. Let's take a look at those things.
In this second half, we're going to go specifically through recommendations on how to make a pool at home safe. So the first thing is pool fences. And in my research, there actually isn't a national pool fence law. There's not a standard in which all private pools need to have a certain fence or type of fencing. Some states and municipalities have laws, for their regions, but there's no universal law for fencing or pool fencing. The American Academy of Pediatrics does have recommendations that the fence is 4 feet high and completely surrounding the pool, kind of what you are talking about.
Yeah, you've got me interested, Sylvia. I'm just looking up what the Maryland law is and what the Texas law is. And so in Maryland, it says the state doesn't have a statewide law. Individual counties set specific requirements for pool fences, must be 48 inches high with a self-closing, self-latching gate. And then in Texas, it's a state law. The homeowner must have the minimum 4 foot high barrier around the pool. Mm-hmm. I think in all of those places, it is an option for homeowners to have their house be one side of the fence, right? Mm-hmm. So, you've got this perimeter fencing and then the house is a fence. And that does a really good job of protecting children who do not live in the house, right? Neighboring children. They can't just wander and fall into your pool. Super, super important. That doesn't do a good job protecting the children who live in the house or children who come as guests invited to that home. And I do see in Texas that if a house wall serves as part of the pool barrier, any doors that lead to the pool require a self-closing, self-latching mechanism and an alarm. So that's another layer of support. So one of the resources I really like for parents, again, comes from the National Drowning Prevention Alliance, and they have a brochure on the 5 layers of pool protection. We talked about many of these in our first episode, but the first one is barriers and alarms, which is really what we're focusing on today. And it goes through the different types of fencing, the property line perimeter fencing, which you just discussed, the 4-sided fencing, which honestly, if I were to have a pool, if I ever stay in a VRBO with a pool, it has to have its own fencing that is separate from the house. Now they do make really nice removable fencing. I can imagine if I was a homeowner with a pool, the pool's really beautiful to look at. So to actually block it with a fence so that you can't see it from the house could really be annoying. I totally understand that. But a compromise would be to do the new removable fencing that could be put up anytime there was a child staying in the house, right?
Right.
So then you have the option of removing it and you can look out at the pool. But I do feel like if there is a small child in the house, there needs to be a fence that is a barrier from the house to the pool.
Absolutely. The second thing that the AAP recommends is to take a look at the fence and make sure that it's not climb proof. So there's no footholds or handholds on the fencing that allows people or children to scale the fence and get over. They also recommend that you not put lawn furniture or play equipment nearby the fence so people can scale the fence easier. They recommend no chain linked fences. Those are not great. I mean, they're barriers, but not deterrents. And then they recommend if you do have a fence that your slats are less than 4 inches apart, because oftentimes smaller children can fit through the slats of the fence. The latch height should be out of the reach of children, 54 inches off of the ground, and to have a gate lock that locks the gate closed when you're not using it. And they encourage, which I think is very interesting, to keep the pool area toy free, to not leave toys or fun things kind of strewn around the pool that makes it tempting for kids to want to be out there for another reason.
Oh, that's very interesting. I did see on here, one of the recommendations was to make sure you don't leave toys in the pool for that same idea that a child isn't tempted to go after the toy in the pool.
So the next thing the AAP talks about are pool alarms. Current alarms detect waves on the water surface and sound off to attract attention if someone falls in the pool. Give me your thoughts, Vivian.
I feel like all of these mechanisms are never going to be 100%. There's always something that can go wrong. So with pool alarms, for example, I'm sure the technology will change, but they're not great right now at distinguishing if something falls in the water or if it's wind or if it's debris or whatever it is. With the latching fence and the gate, what if somebody props open the gate and leaves it propped? What if the latching mechanism is broken? What if one of the fence bars is broken, right? Like with the door alarm for getting out of the house, like what if the door alarm goes off, but you don't hear it because you're in the shower? I mean, none of these things is 100%. So I feel like having a multi-layered approach is really important. So I'm certainly supportive of the pool alarms, but it has to be taken as it should not be your only mechanism that's in place. It's just adding an extra layer so that statistically we're making it less likely that there's going to be a mishap because we've got so many layers in place.
Absolutely. The last thing that they talk about are pool covers. If you have a pool cover, it must cover the entire pool securely so that a child can't slip under them. Oftentimes, floating solar or floating winter covers are not safety covers, and they can actually increase the drowning risk because people think that they're solid. And when a child steps on them, they can slip into the pool and then get under the cover and be trapped that way. It also reduces visibility if there's a child underneath the pool cover. At first glance at the pool, you will not visually see them, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm really intrigued. I like the idea of these pool safety nets that they make now. I mean, its
Mhm.
sole purpose is to prevent somebody from falling in the pool, but they can allow the pool still to be serviced. Again, I feel like the name of the game is just putting multiple systems in place so that if one fails, you have another one to fall back on to try to prevent drowning events.
I feel like all of these measures, when you have an at-home pool, it's putting the responsibility onto that homeowner and that pool owner.
Hmm.
There is a certain degree of responsibility you have by owning a pool to ensure that it is a safe environment where people won't accidentally fall in or drown in your pool. And I think these recommendations kind of illustrate how to be a responsible pool owner, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think these recommendations are particularly poignant if you're a pool owner who also has toddlers living in your house
Right.
or
For sure.
frequently visiting your house. It's super important to guard. If you're a parent who has all teenagers who can swim, then these are just things to be aware of for when you do have toddlers visit your house, right? You
Right.
should still be aware of these things, but you may not need that. Again, you may not need that fence all the way around the pool because you like standing in the kitchen and looking out at the beauty of your pool. I fully understand that. So
Right.
yes, I agree with you. This is all about being a responsible pool owner, but understanding the level of risk that you have based on the children that are in your home or visiting your home. We've talked about barriers and gates and alarms, and these are all structural ways of keeping the pool safe. I want to mention a couple of other things that can be an added layer of safety if you are at a house with a pool.
Okay,
Okay,
sure.
right. I mean, this is a no-brainer. We're going to say it every time. Teaching our children to swim is really important, right?
Mhm. Right.
I mean, ultimately, that is the end all. Your child can swim. You're reassured if they accidentally get out of your sight and they go into the pool, they are probably going to swim to the edge and get out. That's the ultimate goal that we're going for. I think a second thing is understanding if you are at a house that has a pool and you are missing a child, you always, always check the pool first. Children drown within 30 seconds to
Right.
a couple of minutes. I mean, it is such a small amount of time that you have
Yeah.
to react.
And for the last thing is for pool owners to know how to recognize signs of distress amongst their swimmers. And it's encouraged that parents learn CPR. So why don't we summarize our thoughts for pool safety when children are not swimming?
First and foremost, I want our listeners to understand that these near drowning or drowning events could happen to anyone, right?
Yeah.
It happens more frequently than you might realize. It is the leading cause of death in children ages 1 to 4. We really need to be on high alert around pools. This episode was focused on how to protect a pool during non-swim times because that's actually the highest incidence of drowning events is when people are not actually actively at the pool. So we talked about barriers and alarms. In previous episodes, we talked about these full 5 layers of protection, barriers and alarms for the pool being number 1, supervision of children when they're at the pool being number 2, water competency, teaching children to swim being number 3,
Yeah.
life jackets and when to use them being number 4, and then emergency preparation. There's so many benefits to learning CPR.
Yeah.
I hope everybody can go enjoy a summer full of pools and water parks and all of the water activities. We hope this gives you a little bit of extra guidance on how to do that safely.
Great. This is 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Dr. Sylvia Bank.
And I'm Dr. Vivian Carlin. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to 10 Kids 2 Docs, hosted and created by Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and recommend our podcast to other listeners. Visit our website at 10kids2docs.com, where you can find links to social media and leave comments or suggestions. Back next week with more topics in parenting.